still dizzy from pain medication and barely able to walk without my walker. I answered the phone to Ashley's voice. "You're home doing nothing anyway. I'm dropping the kids off for the week. Kevin and I need a break from parenting." The line went dead before I could protest. 20 minutes later, I made 3 phone calls that would change everything. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I'm Dorothy Mitchell, 68 years old, and exactly 1 week ago, I had my hip replaced. The surgeon said I'd need at least 6 weeks to recover, maybe 8. My house in Toledo still smelled like the antiseptic from the visiting nurse's daily visits, and I could barely make it from my bedroom to the kitchen without stopping to rest. But Ashley didn't care about any of that. She'd married my son Kevin 15 years ago, and from day one, she treated me like unpaid help. Need a babysitter? Call Grandma Dot. Need someone to clean up after their parties? Grandma Dot will handle it. Never mind that I'm a retired registered nurse who spent 43 years taking care of other people. Never mind that I buried my beloved husband Frank just 3 years ago and I'm still figuring out how to live alone. The doorbell rang at exactly 2:30 p.m. Through my front window, I watched Ashley march up my walkway, dragging Emma by the hand while Jake carried baby Lily. Even from this distance, I could see Emma's wrinkled school uniform and Jake's mismatched shoes. "Here they are," Ashley announced, pushing past me into my living room. She dropped 2 garbage bags on my couch, apparently their clothes for the week. "Emma knows how to make sandwiches, so feeding them won't be hard. Jake still wets the bed sometimes, but you probably have plastic sheets from when Kevin was little." I stared at her. "Ashley, I just had major surgery. I can barely walk." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, Dot, you're being dramatic." It's not like you have anything else to do." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "We'll be back Sunday. The kids are fine on their own most of the time anyway." And she was gone. I looked down at 3 pairs of eyes staring up at me. Emma, 12 years old, clutching a backpack that looked like it hadn't been washed in months. Jake, 9, holding his little sister's hand protectively. And Lily, just 6, with tangled hair and a thumb firmly planted in her mouth. "Well," I said, leaning heavily on my walker, "I guess we're roommates for the week." That's when Emma started crying, and I realized this wasn't just about Ashley dumping her responsibilities on me. These children were desperate, neglected, and scared. But they were also about to learn that Grandma Dot was nobody's fool. "Are you going to send us back?" Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. It was then I noticed the bruise on Jake's arm and how thin all 3 children looked. My nursing instincts kicked in despite my pain medication fog, and I knew this was much worse than I'd imagined. I lowered myself carefully onto my couch, patting the cushion beside me. "Come here, sweetheart. Nobody's getting sent anywhere." As the children settled around me, I started asking gentle questions. When was the last time they'd eaten a real meal? Did they have clean clothes at home? Who was watching them when Mom and Dad went out? The answers broke my heart. Frozen dinners and cereal for most meals, laundry piling up because Mom's too busy with her yoga classes. Emma, at 12, was essentially raising her siblings while Ashley went to the spa, and Kevin worked 60-hour weeks to pay for Ashley's lifestyle. But I'd learned something during my 4 decades as a nurse. When children are involved, you don't just treat the symptoms. You find the cause, and you fix it permanently. While the kids ate grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, the first hot meal they'd had in days, according to Emma, I made my first phone call. "Sharon, it's Dot Mitchell." "Yes, from the hospital. Listen, I need a favor, and it's important." Sharon Peterson had been a social worker for 30 years before retiring. More importantly, she owed me. I'd covered her shifts more times than I could count when her own children were sick. "I need documentation," I told her quietly, while the children watched cartoons in my living room. 3 neglected children, and I think we're looking at emotional abuse, possibly physical. "Can you come by tomorrow?" My second call was to my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, an 80-year-old busybody with nothing better to do than watch everyone's business through her lace curtains. "Edith, I need you to watch my house this week. Take pictures of anyone who comes or goes. Write down license plate numbers. Yes, it's important." My third call was to Kevin's office. "This is Dorothy Mitchell, Kevin's mother. I need to speak with him." "Yes, I'll hold." When Kevin finally came on the line, I kept my voice sweet as honey. Hi, sweetheart. Ashley dropped the children off for the week. Such a lovely surprise. We're having the most wonderful time. I could hear the relief in his voice. Oh, good, Mom. Ashley said you'd be happy to help out. She's been so stressed lately. Of course she has, I said, watching Jake help Lily color in a coloring book I kept for their visits. Don't worry about us. We'll be just fine. What Kevin didn't know was that by the time he and Ashley returned from their break, I would have enough evidence to bury them both. The next morning, I woke to the sound of Emma making breakfast for her siblings. Through my bedroom door, I could hear her quiet voice. Jake, you need to eat something. And Lily, use your fork, not your fingers. It was 6:30 a.m., and a 12-year-old was being a mother because her actual mother was too selfish to care. I found them in my kitchen, Emma standing on a chair to reach the cereal boxes, Jake feeding Lily spoonfuls of oatmeal with the patience of someone far older than 9. They'd already cleaned up their dishes and were getting ready for school. How long have you been doing this, sweetheart? I asked Emma, as gently as I could. She shrugged, trying to look casual. Mom's not really a morning person. Dad leaves for work at 5:30, so... She trailed off, but I understood. This child had been raising herself and her siblings for years. That afternoon, Sharon arrived as promised. She was a small woman with gray hair and the sharp eyes of someone who'd seen every kind of family dysfunction imaginable. She spent 2 hours with the children while I pretended to nap, but I was actually listening to every word. Emma, can you tell me about a normal day at your house? Well, Dad leaves really early for work. Mom usually sleeps until noon, so I get Jake and Lily ready for school and make their lunch. After school, I help Jake with his homework while Lily watches TV. When Mom wakes up, she's usually grumpy and says we're too loud. What about dinner? Emma hesitated. Sometimes Mom orders pizza. Mostly we just find something. I know how to make mac and cheese and peanut butter sandwiches. Sharon took careful notes, her expression growing darker with each revelation. When she finished with the children, she found me in the kitchen. This is worse than I thought. Worse than... That little girl is completely parentified, and the younger ones show signs of emotional neglect. The baby still isn't potty trained properly, and she's 6 years old. I nodded grimly. I know. The question is, what can we do about it? Document everything. Keep them here as long as possible, and whatever you do, don't let the parents know we're building a case. That evening, after tucking all 3 children into beds in my spare room, beds they shared because they were afraid to sleep alone, I sat in my kitchen with a legal pad and started writing down everything I'd observed. Emma doing all the parenting, Jake's defensive behavior whenever someone raised their voice, Lily's regression with potty training and her constant thumb-sucking, the way all 3 children hoarded food like they weren't sure when their next meal would come. But I was also documenting something else, how quickly they'd responded to actual care and attention. Emma had smiled for the first time in years when I praised her for taking such good care of her siblings. Jake had opened up about his favorite subject in school. Lily had let me brush her hair without crying. These children weren't damaged beyond repair. They were resilient, loving, and desperate for someone to actually parent them. Well, they were about to get exactly that. Because Ashley and Kevin were about to learn that you don't mess with Grandma Dot's grandchildren. By Thursday, the house had transformed. Emma was sleeping past 6 a.m. for the first time in years because she didn't have to wake up and take care of everyone. Jake was doing his homework at my kitchen table while I helped him with math problems, something his parents had never bothered to do. And Lily was finally using the bathroom like a 6-year-old should, now that she had consistent meals and wasn't living in constant anxiety. But it was during that quiet afternoon, while the kids were at school and I was sorting through old photo albums, that I really understood how far my son had fallen. There were pictures of Kevin as a boy, bright-eyed and helpful, always the first to volunteer when his father and I needed something done around the house. Kevin at his college graduation, beaming with pride as Frank and I posed with him. Kevin on his wedding day, looking genuinely happy as he danced with Ashley. When had he stopped fighting for his children? When had he decided that working 60 hours a week and letting Ashley do whatever she wanted was easier than being an actual father? I found my answer in a photo from Christmas 2 years ago. Kevin looked exhausted, defeated. Ashley was posing for the camera in an expensive dress while the children sat quietly in the background, clearly afraid to be too loud or too excited. My son had become a ghost in his own home. But I remembered something Ashley didn't know about. 20 years ago, when Kevin was going through his divorce from his first wife, he'd sat in this very kitchen and cried as he told me, "Mom, I never want my kids to feel unwanted or scared in their own home." Well, Kevin, I thought grimly, you failed, but I'm about to fix it. That evening, I called my lawyer. "Harold, it's Dot Mitchell. I need to ask you about grandparents' rights in Ohio." "Yes, I'll hold." While I waited, I watched Emma help Jake with his reading while Lily colored pictures for the refrigerator. They were acting like normal children for the first time all week, laughing and playing instead of walking on eggshells. "Harold? Good. Now, if I were to document severe neglect and emotional abuse, what would be the process for emergency custody?" "I see. And if the father was complicit in the neglect?" "Yes, I understand." After I hung up, Emma appeared beside my chair. "Grandma Dot, are we going to have to go home Sunday?" The hope and fear in her voice nearly broke my heart. I pulled her close, breathing in the scent of the strawberry shampoo I'd used when I'd finally been able to give her a proper bath. "Sweetheart, what would you say if I told you that you and Jake and Lily might be able to stay here with me for a while?" Her eyes widened. "Really? We could stay here? With bedtimes and vegetables and help with homework?" I nodded, feeling my resolve strengthen. "Really. But it might get complicated, and your parents might be very angry with Grandma." Emma hugged me tighter. "I don't care if they're angry. I just want Jake and Lily to be safe." And that's when I knew that what I was planning wasn't just right. It was necessary. Friday evening, I called Ashley's mother. Barbara had never liked me much, but she was about to become my most important ally. "Barbara, it's Dorothy Mitchell. I need to tell you what's happening with your grandchildren." The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, "What do you mean?" "I mean Emma is raising her siblings because Ashley can't be bothered. I mean these children are neglected, underfed, and emotionally traumatized. And I have documentation to prove it." Another long pause. "That's impossible. Ashley tells me everything is fine." "When was the last time you actually saw the children?" "Barbara, not just pictures on social media, but actually spent time with them?" I heard her sharp intake of breath. She couldn't remember because Ashley kept the children away from anyone who might notice their condition. "I'm sending you some photos," I continued, pulling up the pictures Sharon had taken of bruises, unwashed clothes, and the way the children hoarded food. "Look at them carefully. Then ask yourself if this is the kind of life you want for your grandchildren." Saturday morning, Barbara showed up at my door. She was a tall, severe woman who'd always disapproved of Ashley's spending habits but had never interfered. One look at Emma, Jake, and Lily running around my backyard in clean clothes, laughing and playing like normal children, and her expression crumbled. "My God, Dorothy, how long has it been like this?" "Years," I said simply. "But we're going to fix it." We spent the morning going over Sharon's documentation, the photos, and my detailed notes from the week. By noon, Barbara was crying. I should have known. All those times Ashley asked for money for the children's clothes or school supplies, but they never seemed to have anything new. She was using the money for herself, I confirmed. Kevin's been working himself to death to pay for Ashley's lifestyle while the children went without. That afternoon, while the children napped, something they'd never been allowed to do at home, Barbara and I made a plan. It was risky, potentially explosive, but it was also the only way to protect Emma, Jake, and Lily permanently. "Are you sure about this, Dorothy?" Barbara asked as we finished our preparations. "Ashley is going to be furious. And Kevin!" I looked out the window at my grandchildren, playing quietly in my yard with toys I'd bought them during the week. Real toys, not the cheap plastic junk Ashley usually bought when she remembered they existed. "Barbara, I've been a nurse for 43 years. I've seen what happens to children when the adults in their lives fail to protect them. These children deserve better, and I'm going to make sure they get it." Sunday couldn't come fast enough, because tomorrow Ashley and Kevin were going to walk into a trap that would save their children's lives, even if it destroyed their marriage. And honestly, after what I'd witnessed this week, I was perfectly fine with that. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. The children were unusually quiet, sensing that something was about to change. Emma kept hovering near me, as if she could prevent the inevitable by staying close enough. "Grandma Dot," Jake asked over breakfast, "do we have to pretend this week didn't happen?" out of the mouths of babes. This 9-year-old had learned that truth was something to hide, that happiness was temporary, and that adults would lie to keep up appearances. "No, sweetheart," I said firmly. "We never have to pretend that love didn't happen." At 2 p.m., right on schedule, I heard Ashley's car in my driveway. Through the window, I watched her check her makeup in the rearview mirror while Kevin stared at his phone. Neither of them seemed eager to see their children after a week away. The doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and opened the door with my brightest smile. "Ashley! Kevin! How was your trip?" Ashley breezed past me, looking tanned and relaxed. "Oh, it was exactly what we needed, Dot. That spa in Napa was divine. You should try it sometime." She glanced around my living room. "Where are the kids?" "Playing in the backyard," I said. "They've been such angels. Come in, sit down. Can I get you some coffee?" As they settled onto my couch, I noticed Kevin looked uncomfortable. Maybe some part of him still remembered what being a father was supposed to feel like. "You know," I said conversationally as I handed them their coffee, "it's been so wonderful having the children here. Emma's such a responsible little girl. She's been taking care of Jake and Lily like a little mother." Ashley nodded absently, scrolling through her phone. She's always been mature for her age. 12 is awfully young to be responsible for 2 younger children. "Don't you think?" "What do you mean?" Kevin asked, finally looking up. I smiled innocently. "Oh, just that Emma told me she gets them ready for school every morning, makes their meals, helps with homework. It's impressive, really, for a 12-year-old to be so parental." The room went very quiet. Ashley's phone slowly lowered to her lap. "She told you what?" "Well, we had lots of time to talk this week. Children open up when they feel safe, you know." I sipped my coffee calmly. "Did you know Lily still has accidents because she's too anxious to ask for help? Or that Jake saves half his lunch every day in case dinner doesn't happen?" Kevin's face had gone pale. "Mom, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that your children have been raising themselves while you've been busy with other priorities." My voice remained pleasant, but steel crept into my tone. "I'm saying that Emma, at 12 years old, knows more about parenting than either of you do." Ashley shot to her feet. "How dare you judge our parenting? Those children are fed and clothed and neglected," I finished quietly. "Emotionally starved, living in survival mode instead of childhood." The back door opened, and the children trooped in, their faces lighting up when they saw Kevin. "Daddy!" Lily ran to him, throwing her arms around his neck. But I was watching Ashley's reaction as Emma approached cautiously, as if unsure of her welcome. The contrast was telling, and my hidden camera was recording every moment. "Well," Ashley said briskly, "we should get going. Kids, get your things." "Actually," I said, standing slowly, "I think we need to have a different conversation first." "Actually," I said, standing slowly, "I think we need to have a different conversation first." I walked to my kitchen counter and picked up a thick manila folder. "About this." Ashley's eyes narrowed. "What is that?" "Documentation," I said simply. "Photos, witness statements, medical observations, everything I've recorded about these children's condition when they arrived here a week ago." Kevin frowned. "Mom, what are you talking about?" I opened the folder and spread several photographs across my coffee table. Ashley's face went white as she recognized them. Pictures of Emma's too thin frame, Jake's bruised arm, Lily's tangled hair, and stained clothes. These were taken by a licensed social worker on Tuesday. I continued calmly. "Sharon Peterson has been documenting cases of child neglect for 30 years. She was very interested in Emma's parenting responsibilities." "You called a social worker on us?" Ashley's voice rose to a shriek. "How dare you interfere in our family?" "Your family?" I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. "Ashley, when did you last help Emma with her homework? When did you last read Jake a bedtime story? When did you last notice that Lily is 6 years old and still not fully potty trained because she's too scared to interrupt your yoga sessions?" Kevin was staring at the photographs, his face growing paler with each image. "Mom, there has to be some explanation." "There is," I said. "The explanation is that you've been working yourself to death to fund Ashley's lifestyle while your children raised themselves." Ashley grabbed the photos, trying to tear them up, but I stopped her. "Those are copies, dear. The originals are with my lawyer." The word lawyer hit Kevin like a physical blow. "Your lawyer?" I nodded to the window, where Barbara's car was pulling into my driveway. And Ashley's mother is here too. Funny thing about grandmothers, when we actually see what's happening to our grandchildren, we tend to get protective. Barbara walked in without knocking, her face grim. She took one look at Ashley and shook her head in disgust. "I've seen enough, Ashley. These children are staying here." "You can't make that decision," Ashley snarled, but her confidence was cracking. "Actually," I said, "we can. I've filed for emergency custody pending a family court hearing. The judge will decide what's in the children's best interests." The room erupted in chaos, but I just smiled and thought about how quiet my house would be tomorrow. Quiet in the best possible way. Ashley's meltdown was spectacular. She screamed about her rights, threatened to call the police, and accused me of kidnapping her children. Through it all, Kevin sat in stunned silence, staring at the documentation spread across my coffee table. "This can't be legal," Ashley shrieked. "You can't just steal our children." "I'm not stealing anyone," I replied calmly. "I'm protecting children who have been neglected for years. There's a difference." Barbara stepped forward, her voice ice cold. "Ashley, I've been blind to this for too long. When Dorothy showed me those photographs, when I saw how these children responded to basic care and attention, I realized what a failure I've been as a grandmother." "Mom, you're taking her side?" "I'm taking the children's side," Barbara corrected. "Something you should have done years ago." Kevin finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "Emma really gets them ready for school every morning?" I nodded. "Every morning for years, Kevin. She makes their lunches, helps with homework, puts them to bed. At 12 years old, she's been more of a mother to Jake and Lily than Ashley ever has." "That's not true," Ashley protested. "I love my children." "Love?" I laughed bitterly. "Ashley, you left them with a woman recovering from major surgery without even packing proper clothes or leaving emergency contacts. You didn't call once to check on them. You don't love these children. You see them as inconveniences." The front door opened, and Sharon Peterson walked in, her professional smile not hiding the steel in her eyes. "Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here for the follow-up interview." Ashley went pale. "What follow-up?" "Standard procedure in potential custody cases," Sharon explained, pulling out her notepad. "I need to interview both parents about their childcare arrangements and parenting philosophy." "This is harassment," Ashley shouted. "This is child protection," Sharon corrected firmly. She turned to Kevin. "Mr. Mitchell, can you tell me about your children's daily routine at home?" Kevin's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He couldn't answer because he didn't know. He left for work before they woke up and came home after Ashley put them to bed, if she bothered to put them to bed at all. "I work long hours to provide for my family," he finally managed. "And who supervises the children while your wife sleeps until noon?" Sharon's pen was poised above her notepad. The silence stretched until Emma's small voice came from the doorway. "I do." We all turned to see my 3 grandchildren standing in the doorway, holding hands. They'd been listening to everything. "Emma, sweetheart," I started, but she shook her head. "No, Grandma Dot. They need to know." She looked directly at her parents. "I get Jake and Lily ready every morning. I make their breakfast and lunch. I help with homework and put them to bed. Because Mom is too busy and Dad is never home." Ashley's face crumpled. But not with remorse, with fury. "You turned them against us." "No, Ashley," I said quietly. "You did that all by yourself." The custody hearing was scheduled for the following Wednesday. In the 3 days between Ashley's meltdown and our court date, something unexpected happened. Kevin started showing up. Not to fight for custody or defend Ashley, to see his children. Monday evening, he knocked on my door with takeout from Emma's favorite Chinese restaurant. "I thought maybe I could have dinner with them," he said quietly. "If that's okay with you, Mom." I watched him carefully. The defeated, exhausted man from Sunday was gone, replaced by someone who looked like he'd been waking up from a very long sleep. "That depends," I said. "Are you here as Ashley's husband or as their father?" Kevin's shoulders sagged. "I don't know if I can be Ashley's husband anymore, Mom. Not after what I've seen this week." Over dinner, I watched my son really look at his children for what felt like the first time in years. He noticed how Emma cut Lily's food without being asked. He saw how Jake automatically cleaned up his spills before anyone could get angry. He observed how all 3 children watched him nervously, as if waiting for him to disappoint them again. "Emma," he said finally, I owe you an apology. Emma looked up from her lo mein, surprised. For what, Daddy? For making you grow up too fast. For not protecting you and Jake and Lily the way I should have. His voice cracked. For letting you become the parent when that was my job. Emma's eyes filled with tears. I didn't mind taking care of them. You shouldn't have had to, Kevin said firmly. That's going to change. After the children went to bed, Kevin and I sat at my kitchen table with coffee, really talking for the first time since he'd gotten married. I don't know how it got so bad, Mom, he said, staring into his mug. Ashley wasn't always like this. When we first met, she seemed to care about the kids. What changed? I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. Money, Kevin said bitterly. As soon as I started making decent money, Ashley started spending it. First it was clothes and spa treatments. She said she deserved nice things after working so hard as a mother. Then it was the bigger house, the expensive car, the luxury vacations. While the children went without, Kevin nodded miserably. I thought if I just worked harder, made more money, I could give everyone what they wanted. I never stopped to ask what the kids actually needed. They needed their father, I said gently. I know that now. He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Mom, I'm filing for divorce, and I want full custody. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. It's about time. But I didn't tell him about Ashley's phone call that afternoon, or her threats about what she'd do to keep the children. Some battles a mother has to fight alone. Ashley's true nature emerged during the custody hearing like a poisonous flower blooming in sunlight. Her lawyer, an expensive shark in a $1,000 suit, painted me as an interfering grandmother trying to steal his client's children. Your Honor, he said smoothly, Mrs. Mitchell is clearly overstepping her bounds. Yes, my client may have made some parenting mistakes, but she loves her children and wants them home. Judge Patricia Hendricks, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, listened patiently before turning to Ashley. Mrs. Mitchell, can you tell me about your children's daily routine? Ashley launched into a well-rehearsed speech about morning snuggles and bedtime stories that had never happened. I watched Emma's face grow increasingly pale as her mother lied under oath about their life together. Then it was Sharon's turn to testify. Your Honor, in my 30 years as a social worker, I've rarely seen such clear-cut parentification of a minor child. Emma Mitchell has been functioning as the primary caregiver for her siblings since she was approximately 8 years old. Sharon presented her evidence methodically. Photographs, interviews, medical observations. When she finished, the courtroom was silent except for Ashley's quiet sobbing. Not tears of remorse, but of rage at being exposed. Judge Hendricks turned to Kevin. Mr. Mitchell, where do you stand in this matter? Kevin stood up slowly, his voice clear and strong. Your Honor, I'm filing for divorce from my wife and requesting full custody of my children. I've been a terrible father, but I want the chance to make it right. Ashley's head snapped up. You can't do this to me, Kevin. I won't let you take my children. Your children? Kevin's voice was ice cold. When did you last help Emma with homework? When did you last take Jake to a doctor's appointment? When did you last notice that Lily has nightmares because she's afraid of making you angry? Ashley's mask finally slipped completely. Those children ruined my life. I was somebody before I had them. I had dreams, plans, a future, and now look at me, trapped in this boring suburban life with 3 demanding brats who never appreciate anything I do for them. The courtroom fell deadly silent. Even Ashley's expensive lawyer looked horrified at his client's outburst. Judge Hendricks leaned forward. Mrs. Mitchell, are you saying you view your children as burdens? Ashley's lawyer grabbed her arm, trying to shut her up, but the damage was done. Years of resentment came pouring out like poison from a wound. I never wanted 3 children. Kevin promised me we'd have help, that I wouldn't have to sacrifice my entire life. But instead I'm stuck with constant demands and whining and messes and... That's enough, Judge Hendricks said sharply. She looked at Ashley with barely concealed disgust. Mrs. Mitchell, you just told this court that you view your children as impediments to your happiness. That tells me everything I need to know about your fitness as a parent. Ashley realized her mistake too late. She tried to backtrack, claiming stress and emotional manipulation, but Judge Hendricks wasn't buying it. Custody is awarded temporarily to the paternal grandmother, Dorothy Mitchell, with visitation rights for the father. Mrs. Ashley Mitchell will have supervised visitation only, pending psychological evaluation and parenting classes. Ashley screamed. Actually screamed in the courtroom, calling the judge biased and threatening to appeal. It took 2 bailiffs to remove her, but I barely heard any of it, because Emma had slipped her small hand into mine and whispered, "Thank you, Grandma Dot. Thank you for saving us." 6 months later, my house had become something I'd never expected at 68 years old. A real home again. Not the quiet, lonely place where I'd been recovering from surgery, but a house full of laughter, homework arguments, and the beautiful chaos of children being children. Emma was finally acting like a 12-year-old instead of a surrogate mother. She joined the school debate team and discovered she had a talent for arguing, something that didn't surprise me at all. Jake was playing Little League baseball, and Kevin never missed a game. Lily had stopped wetting the bed and started kindergarten with the confidence of a child who knew she was loved. Kevin had moved into an apartment nearby and had been awarded full custody after completing parenting classes and anger management. The man who sat at my dinner table every Sunday was nothing like the exhausted, defeated person who'd enabled Ashley's neglect for years. "Mom," he said one evening after the children were in bed, "I'll never be able to repay you for what you did." "You don't need to repay me," I replied, settling into my favorite chair with my knitting. "You just need to keep being their father." Ashley had fought the divorce viciously, demanding alimony and half of everything Kevin owned. What she got instead was a restraining order after she showed up at Emma's school screaming about parental alienation. Her supervised visits had ended when she spent an entire hour complaining to the children about how they'd ruined her life. The last I'd heard, she'd moved back to California with her mother, still convinced that everyone else was the problem. But the real victory wasn't in court documents or custody orders. It was in the way Lily ran to me every morning for hugs. It was watching Jake help his little sister with her shoelaces without being asked. It was seeing Emma smile like the child she still was, finally free to be young and silly and irresponsible. This morning, Emma had asked if she could invite a friend over for a sleepover. A normal request from a normal 12-year-old who no longer had to worry about taking care of everyone else. "Of course, sweetheart," I'd told her. "This is your home too." And it was. For as long as they needed it, these children would have a safe place to grow up, make mistakes, and be loved unconditionally. Sometimes the most important battles are fought in courtrooms and children's bedrooms, not on grand stages. Sometimes victory looks like a 6-year-old sleeping through the night without nightmares, or a 9-year-old who doesn't flinch when adults raise their voices. As I watched the sunset from my kitchen window, I thought about that phone call 6 months ago. Ashley had been right about one thing. I was home doing nothing anyway. But what she hadn't understood was that nothing can sometimes be everything, and sometimes doing nothing is exactly what children need most. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever had to fight for someone who couldn't fight for themselves? Comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.